TTD is a federation of 37 unions whose members design, build, operate, and maintain America's transportation network. We proudly represent the totality of rail labor, whose members work on those front lines across the entire passenger and freight rail industry. These workers see firsthand the service, safety, and staffing challenges in freight rail, and we know the negative consequences for workers, customers, and communities when the system is not operating properly. Today, I am reminded of the last time I testified before this committee, just 2 days before the derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. This derailment traumatized the community and drew national attention to safety deficiencies in the freight rail network. The East Palestine derailment is the embodiment of a fact that rail workers have warned about for years, that safety, customer service, and workforce morale at the Class I freight railroads have been subverted by a business model that prioritizes profits and shareholder returns above all. I want to emphasize 2 points today. First, that safety and service issues are directly connected and are the result of management decisions. Second, the only way this industry will improve is through intervention by Congress. The industry will not meaningfully reform itself, and core safety and service improvements should not be left for the bargaining table. Any service industry should be responsive to the demands and needs of its consumers. Instead, the Class I railroads adopted an operating model known as precision scheduled railroading, which fundamentally seeks to generate the highest possible profits through the lowest possible operating ratios. A key element of this business model is stripping rail networks of their physical and human capital. Since 2015, Class I railroads reduced their total workforce by 30%. They slashed their private investments in physical infrastructure and sold off or sidelined essential equipment. In making these cuts, the railroads have made a choice to simply not provide adequate rail service. The actions of the Class Is came to a head during the pandemic, when freight rail service issues marred the supply chain. Throughout the pandemic, the railroads imposed service embargoes, limiting the amount of freight a railroad accepts from a customer. The embargoes led to massive backlogs of freight, including ships and containers at the Port of LA Long Beach, and among others. The Surface Transportation Board has taken unprecedented steps in recent years to monitor and direct the Class I railroads to improve their service. 1 year after the STB held watershed hearings on rail service issues, the board found earlier this month that rail service had not meaningfully improved and that at least 3 of the Big 4 freight railroads failed to meet their own self-improvement benchmarks. The railroads' issues also extend to safety. Unfortunately, East Palestine was not an anomaly. The industry averages over 1,000 derailments a year. That's nearly 3 a day. Contrary to the railroad's rhetoric, the industry's safety record is getting worse, not improving. According to federal data, the accident and incident rate has actually increased over the last decade at the 4 biggest Class I railroads. Labor union shippers and the Class Is all agree that the first step to a better freight rail service is to hire more workers, yet the railroads have made little progress in increasing their workforce numbers as well. As of March 2023, the total Class I employment level remained below pre-pandemic levels. It also still significantly lower than the pre-PSR high watermark. On an individual Class I railroad basis, only Canadian Pacific and CSX have gotten back to their pre-pandemic employment levels. It is no surprise that Class I railroads have struggled to retain and hire the workforce they need to meet demand. While they talk about the importance of rebuilding their workforce, they still have not resolved quality of life issues like draconian attendance policies and lack of access to leave that are driving workers out of the industry. Until they do so, employee hiring and retention rates will be insufficient and rail service will suffer. It will take action from Congress, federal regulators, and the railroads themselves to resolve the core staffing, service, and safety issues that threaten not only our country's freight rail supply chain, but our overall economy. Rail labor and shippers are united around many of the proposed solutions, which doesn't actually happen very often. Congress should further strengthen and define the existing federal common carrier obligation that rail carriers serve a shipper on a reasonable request. That reasonable request language is not defined in federal statute, making it difficult to enforce. The Surface Transportation Board has made admirable efforts to get the railroads to improve service, but they need more enforcement tools to ensure that the railroads are meeting their common carrier obligations. Rail can be the greenest and most effective way to move cargo over land, but only if we have a well-kept infrastructure and well-trained workers in place to meet the existing demands and future demands of our shipping communities and expand the market share of goods safely shipped by rail. We have a unique opportunity to get freight rail back on track by passing meaningful rail safety and service improvement legislation and harnessing the investments of the infrastructure law in concert with greater investments from the railroads themselves. It is time for everyone to act. Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to